This is not a success story. This is a survival story. Luis Hernandez didn't come to America chasing a dream. He came running from a nightmare. It was the spring of 1993 when Luis and his family arrived in Los Angeles. They had nothing but 2 suitcases, a few $100s, and the name of a distant cousin who didn't answer his phone anymore. Luis was 16. He had never seen skyscrapers or concrete stretching for miles. Back in Guatemala, their town had one grocery store, a single gas pump, and a dirt road that turned to mud every time it rained. But in LA, everything was fast, loud, cold, and completely unforgiving. His father, Hector, had once been a respected math teacher. His mother, Sophia, had run a bakery from their home. But in this new country, none of that mattered. No one asked about degrees or reputations. They asked, "Do you have papers?" And when the answer was no, doors slammed shut. Within a month, his father was working construction, illegally under the table, and his mother cleaned houses. Luis enrolled in high school but barely spoke English. He was tall for his age, quiet, always looking over his shoulder. Every day he came home to swollen feet, tear-stained faces, and unpaid bills. By the time he turned 17, Luis dropped out of school. Not because he wanted to, but because the rent was due, his father's back had given out, and his mother needed medicine they couldn't afford. He found a job through a friend of a friend, night janitor at a downtown office building. $11 an hour, midnight to 7 a.m., 6 days a week. And just like that, Luis Hernandez became invisible. The building was 15 stories tall. Offices, law firms, accounting departments. At night, it was a ghost town. Luis would arrive just before midnight, mop in hand, headphones in, hoodie up. He worked floor by floor, vacuuming carpets, scrubbing toilets, wiping fingerprints from glass doors. He took the service elevator. He avoided security guards. He didn't want trouble. He didn't want attention. He just wanted to finish the job, cash the check, and help his family survive one more week. The thing about cleaning offices is, you start to notice things. You see the notes people leave themselves, the photos on their desks, the trash they forget to throw away. Luis learned a lot about people that way. Who had kids, who was cheating, who worked late, and who pretended to. He cleaned the CEO's office last. Always last. That office, it was different. The carpet was softer. The windows stretched across the city skyline. There was a bottle of whiskey on the shelf, a photo of a man shaking hands with the mayor, and a plaque that read, "Success is built after hours." Luis would stare at that plaque every night. He didn't know why, but it made his chest ache. He didn't feel bitter. He just felt tired. And deeply, deeply small. At home, things didn't get better. His father couldn't work anymore. His back was permanently damaged. His mother was diagnosed with lupus and spent more and more days in bed. Luis became the man of the house, even though he barely felt like a man at all. Sometimes, after his shift, he'd stop by a 24-hour diner just to sit near people and hear their conversations. It reminded him he was still alive. One morning, while wiping down a glass door on the 12th floor, Luis found a note stuck to a desk lamp. It was addressed to no one. It read, "You are not invisible. Someone is watching. Keep going." He looked around. No one. The office was empty, dark. Just that single light. The handwriting was elegant, careful. It wasn't meant for him, but he took it like it was. He folded the note and put it in his wallet. He carried it there for years. One day, his mother didn't wake up. She had gone to bed early, complaining of dizziness. Luis checked on her before leaving for his shift. She smiled and told him, "Te quiero mucho. Be careful." By morning she was gone. Her funeral was small. A few neighbors, a pastor, and a coffin they couldn't afford. Luis stood next to his father, now silent, hollowed out. And in that moment, Luis made a promise. He didn't know how. and he didn't know when. But he would get them out. He would find a way, even if it killed him. 2 weeks later, something changed. It was a Friday. Luis was cleaning the executive conference room when a voice startled him. "You do floors too?" Luis turned. It was a white man in a blue button-down shirt. Maybe late 40s. Friendly eyes. "Yes, sir," Luis replied, heart pounding. The man smiled. "Good work. This place always looks better than mine." Luis didn't know what to say. He nodded, quietly gathered his bucket. "What's your name?" the man asked. "Luis." "Luis, you ever think about doing something else?" Luis paused. "I don't have papers. I didn't finish school." The man nodded, thought for a moment, then reached into his briefcase and pulled out a business card. "Come by Monday. Ask for me." Luis looked at the card. It said, Robert McAllister, Chief Operations Officer. Luis didn't sleep that Sunday night. He kept staring at the business card. Robert McAllister. This wasn't a joke. He had seen the man before, once or twice, leaving late meetings or talking into 2 phones at once. He wasn't just anybody. Luis thought about throwing the card away, about skipping the meeting, about how people like Robert didn't help people like him. But something inside him, maybe the same thing that had kept him cleaning toilets at 3 a.m. for 2 years, told him to go. So he did. The office. Luis arrived early, dressed in his only button-up shirt and clean jeans. He waited in the lobby for nearly 45 minutes. When Robert finally came out, he was surprised to see Luis sitting there. "You actually came," he said. Luis nodded. "You said Monday." Robert smiled. "Come on. Let's talk." They sat in a glass-walled office overlooking the city. Luis tried not to sweat, or shake, or breathe too loudly. "So," Robert said, "tell me your story." Luis told him everything. The move, the job, his mom, the floors. He didn't try to sound brave, just honest. When he finished, Robert leaned back and said something Luis would never forget. "You remind me of my father." He explained that his dad had also worked nights. A warehouse foreman who raised 4 kids after his wife died young. "He didn't get far in life," Robert said. "But I did because of him." Luis didn't know what to say. Robert leaned forward. "I can't give you a promotion. You don't even work for us. Technically, you work for the cleaning contractor. But I can give you something else. A chance." He handed Luis a folder. Inside, an application to a local community college. "You want out? Start here. Back to school." Luis enrolled 2 weeks later. He picked night classes, so he could keep his janitor job during the day. The roles flipped. Now he cleaned floors when the sun was out, and studied algebra when the stars came up. He hadn't done math in years. His English was still rough, and he was older than most students in his classes. He failed his first economics exam. He considered quitting, but every time he passed that CEO office and saw the plaque, "Success is built after hours," he reminded himself. This was after hours. His time. Luis studied harder. He spent lunch breaks in the library. He watched YouTube videos on accounting. He asked for help, something he'd never done before. By the end of the semester, he passed with a B average. The long years. What followed were 5 of the hardest years of Luis's life. He worked 50 hours a week as a cleaner, then 20 more as a delivery driver. He took business classes at night and read textbooks on the bus. He drank more coffee than water. He missed birthdays, funerals, and weddings. But he graduated. Not just with a certificate, with honors. Robert stayed in touch. They met once a year, usually over lunch. Luis would bring him updates. A past exam, a new job title, a fresh scar on his knuckles from working too hard. Robert always smiled. "Keep going." Luis moved up, from janitor to building supervisor, then to operations assistant. He learned everything. Budgeting, logistics, how to fix an elevator when no one else could. When the cleaning company was sold, he applied for management, and got it. By age 30, he was in charge of 12 buildings, 3 teams, and his own office. It had no windows, but it had his name on the door. That was enough. Until one morning, when everything almost fell apart. Crisis. It was the winter of 2011. Luis was called into a meeting at headquarters. There had been an accounting error, a big one. Payroll was off. Invoices were missing. Half the company's contracts were under review. It was bad. The board was considering layoffs, restructuring, maybe even dissolving the company. Luis asked for a chance to fix it. They gave him 2 weeks. He worked around the clock. He slept in the office. He audited every file, renegotiated contracts, fired 2 supervisors who'd been skimming off the books. He did the work of 10 people. Because this was the company that had saved his life. He wasn't going to let it die. At the end of those 2 weeks, he handed the CEO a full report. Organized, transparent, balanced to the dollar. They didn't lay off a single person. The offer. 6 months later, the CEO retired. Robert McAllister stepped down too. Heart issues. The company was being sold to an outside firm. Rumors flew. But one rumor became reality. Luis was offered the chance to buy in. He didn't have the money. But Robert had been planning for years. He had created a fund, small, but enough for Luis to become a shareholder, then part owner. And in 2013, 20 years after his first shift as a janitor, Luis Hernandez became the CEO of the very company whose floors he used to mop. Luis never forgot the smell of cleaning fluid at 3 a.m., even when he sat behind a polished mahogany desk, even when he wore tailored suits and spoke at business conferences. Even when people shook his hand and called him Mr. Hernandez, he still remembered the feel of a mop handle between his fingers. That memory kept him grounded, rebuilding from the inside. As CEO, Luis didn't start by making big speeches or bold moves. He started with coffee. Every morning at 6 a.m., he personally greeted the janitorial staff. He asked their names. He listened to their stories. He handed out new uniforms, better equipment, safer chemicals. He doubled the night shift wages in his first 100 days. Some board members questioned it. Luis didn't blink. If we take care of the people who work in the dark, they'll carry us through any storm. He rewrote policies. He built career paths for entry-level staff. He launched an ESL program on company time. He partnered with the same community college, where he once studied, and created scholarships for the children of employees. And once a year, he still mopped the lobby floor himself, quietly, before anyone arrived. Recognition. The press caught on. From janitor to CEO. Meet the man cleaning up corporate America. That was the headline in Forbes. He appeared on late-night interviews. He gave a TED Talk about dignity in labor. He received awards, degrees, invitations. But Luis never got used to applause. What moved him most was something smaller. One day, a young woman knocked on his office door. She was quiet, nervous. "Sir," she said, "my father used to clean this building. He told me about you every night. You gave him hope. I just got accepted into UCLA. I want to say thank you." Luis stood up and hugged her like a daughter. That night he cried for the first time in years. Letters and ghosts. In 2021, Luis opened an envelope that had no return address. Inside was a small folded piece of paper. It read, "You are not invisible. Someone is watching. Keep going." It was the same note, the same handwriting, the same message he'd found taped to a desk lamp all those years ago. There was no explanation, no signature, just a memory returned. Luis placed it in a frame and hung it in his office, right next to his mother's photo. What he left behind. Luis retired at 47. Not because he was tired, but because he believed others needed a chance. He trained his replacement personally, a young man from El Salvador who had started as a cleaner 5 years earlier. Luis saw himself in the kid's eyes. Hunger, humility, fire. Before stepping down, Luis wrote a letter to his team. Success is not built after hours. Success is the hours. The dark ones. The lonely ones. The hours no one sees. Keep showing up. Keep shining shoes. Keep fixing things no one thanks you for. Because one day you'll turn around and see that you've built something no one can take from you. He signed it. Luis Hernandez. Former janitor, always grateful. Epilogue. Today Luis lives in a modest home in Pasadena. HE Gardens. He volunteers at a local shelter. He speaks to immigrant youth. He still rides the bus sometimes just to remember. He doesn't think of himself as a CEO. He thinks of himself as a cleaner, a builder, a son. And every year, on the anniversary of his mother's death, he walks into that same downtown building. He takes the service elevator to the 15th floor. He enters the CEO's office, now occupied by someone else. And he stands in front of the window, looking out over the city. And he whispers, "Te quiero mucho, mama. I did it.